I think of thoughts like this. It's like going by on a freeway. All these cars are going by. Just select the ones that you want. So you have to know we were never meant to serve our brains. Our brains should be our masters, right? What we should lead with is our heart and our gut. So our brain, it's almost like there should be a bouncer that's like, I'm not going to let these thoughts get in. And the bouncer's like, nope, you're not on the guest list anymore. Thank you for the thought, but come by tomorrow.
Welcome back to the Dream Architect Life podcast. This is an episode that I have been waiting for so long to bring to you, our awesome listeners, and who I'm about to introduce to you, you're going to see very quickly is not only a gem of a human being, but is putting out such massive contribution into the world. So today I have with me Karla Olson. Karla is an author, a coach, and former co-host of the Park City Pulse TV show. She is a founding member of Lions Heart Park City, Little Miracles Utah nonprofit, and her favorite title, Mom to 3 Daughters. Karla is an expert on preparing for an empty nest and founded the Empty Nester Club to help other women rediscover who they are before those kids leave the nest. Karla's passion for empowering others is evident in her upcoming book, Helping Women Find Their True Passion. Her one-of-a-kind blueprint for helping parents rediscover their passions and prepare ahead for their children leaving the nest is featured in her upcoming book, The Almost Empty Nester. That is due out in September of 2024, a few short months
Yeah.
away.
Yep.
Karla, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I wanted to be on your show for so long, and I'm just glad we could finally make it work.
Yes. Well, as I said, I've been so looking forward to this conversation. And Karla, we're going to just dive right into it. I would love for you to talk a little bit about like, what is the inspiration in your messaging? Obviously, you're a mom and you've got 3 daughters, but just talk a little bit about where you landed or why you landed in the journey that you're in.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was at my daughter's graduation in 2019. I have 3 girls. And I just heard conversations on the field that day. There were so many people saying to other parents, oh, you're going to be an empty nester soon. And the question really kind of stopped me in my tracks. But then I thought, well, I have 6 more years. I don't really need to, think about it yet. Well, fast forward 3 years later, and I'm at my second daughter's graduation, and I still couldn't answer that question of what I wanted to do, when all kids were out of the house. And so that's when I started writing the outline for this book called The Almost Empty Nester. I help women rediscover who they are before their children leave the nest. And so what was interesting is I started off doing this for me to help me with this transition. And now it's absolutely, after all the research I've learned, it's my true purpose in midlife. And so there's, I mean, 22 million empty nesters in the US alone. The statistics say only 7% prepare for it. And the data also says that 63% report feeling lost or lonely, and that can climb to 75% if you have financial or health issues. And so I just thought, there's other empty nesting books out there, but I just thought there's something missing because it doesn't have to be that way. It could be one of our next best chapters. And so I'm really trying to elevate the conversation globally around empty nesting to be not from a position of lack, but for potential for more joy. So that's the premise of the book.
So I think this is so beautiful. And, I think you and I have both heard this saying before that, the notion goes that who you are best set to serve is who you need
Yes.
to be. And,
Yes.
you've gone through this tried and tested, process of, the
Right.
grief and the sadness and the excitement and the
And
happiness and
all
everything.
of
Yes.
it.
So, Karla, I want to give some context to the audience here because a lot of our listeners, whether they're facing an empty nest right now, coming up on it, they've just gone past it, or just in general, they're facing major life transitions because we all have those things. We have things like
Right.
the empty nest, like retirement, like moving from one major career to another, moving across the country, like all these things are major transitions. So can you share, Karla, like as you're going through your own journey, because you came off of like you've had an amazing career, you've had an amazing time as a mom. Like, how are you looking at your future? Like, how are you looking ahead to say, okay, I know this isn't like a stop sign. I have a
Right. Like
fork
my
in the
life's
road.
not over.
Yeah, life's not over.
Yeah.
There's still things ahead. So, like, what are you doing to kind of redefine and how do you help people? Like, what's part of the process?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so beautiful when you're at this age because you can really define success for yourself, right? And so I don't look to society to like choose what I should be doing. I really have gone internal and I'm like, what are my soul whispers, right? What are my gifts? Even like the struggles that I've been through, I've gone through cancer twice. Who needs to hear my story so I can help them turn their light back on and give their gifts to the world? And so I think for me, I have really thought about what success means for me. And then also like realistic expectations, right? I think expectations that we put on ourselves are sometimes from society or from parents. It could be an old story from a teacher saying you were never good enough or whatever it is. But I definitely make sure that I stay in the lane of, does this feel right to me? And if it doesn't, it's a big no. And so I wasn't always that way. I was very much a yes person, but I really want mothers to start getting in touch with their identity again. I mean, we'll always be mothers. That's not the point. But the point is, I want them to get used to being an individual again, to be like, what do I want? And also, when I thought about it, I was thinking, God, I'm 54. What can I really do at this age? And then I thought about it. My software career was 10 years, and I did so much in those 10 years. I have another 10 years ahead of me. You have another 10 years ahead of me. I could go do a whole nother career. So it was just a great way to flip it because when empty nesting was approaching, I was kind of feeling like the end was approaching. And now I feel like this big, huge beginning is coming
Mhm.
towards me. So yeah.
I love that. And I think that your framing is so interesting because you're going back and I mean, essentially you're looking for proof of concept. And
Yeah.
what a great practice for people to put into place to say, just because I've done this up until now, it doesn't mean I'm limited. It actually means I can do even more. I have even more to bring to
Yes.
the table, and I have so much
Yeah.
more ahead of me too. So
And you have
one
more
thing,
wisdom, you work faster,
yeah.
all the things, right? I mean, you're bringing all that to your next best 10, right? So
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
there's
I
a
love
book.
the next best 10 because there's always the
There you
10
go.
ahead.
Let's write
I
it.
love it. So, Karla, one thing I think about as you were talking there, you know, you're talking about how like you find the human again, you find who you are as a person. So for many of us, when you're a mom, when you are, you know, whether you're devoting your time solely to your children, volunteer work, or you've decided, you know what, I'm going to have a career while I raise my family, and now, yeah, I've still got my career, but things still feel different. You really dedicated your time to somebody else for so long, right? Whether it's
Yes.
teams, it's your kids, it's your spouse, and then there's a whole other conversation here, but a lot of times women often, not always, but often find
Mhm.
themselves caretaking for their older parents.
Yes. Yep.
So it's like you're constantly putting
That's right
yourself
where
on
I'm
the
at.
back burner. Right. So can
Mhm.
you talk a little bit, you know, I think part of your book, and I've had such a great pleasure of having a sneak peek at the manuscript, and it's so beautiful and it's so well written. How
Thank
do
you.
you help somebody to put themselves first when they haven't done that for
Yes.
a long time?
A long time. So I think the one thing I try to do, especially when coaching, is we have to unravel that old antiquated thing of motherhood is martyrdom. Our daughters don't need to see that anymore. I mean, absolutely fill up your own cup, let everyone else fall in love with the overflow because when we're filled up, we're better mothers, we're better wives, we're better friends, right? And so I think I struggle with it too. When you said, how can we get them to put themselves first? I think we've been taught that, but I don't like the word first because it implies everyone else is last, right? So I wonder if we could come up like, I want to put myself equal to everyone that I'm
Mhm.
serving, right? I think that's a better energy, right? And then I'm still serving my husband, still helping my kids. But, you know, for me, I kind of lost myself a little bit in my life. I've been a mom for 23 years. I used to be in corporate America. I love using my brain. And I should have probably gone back to work part-time because I just slowly started to fade into the background of my own life. And a couple years ago, I was like, I don't want my kids to see that. I really want, because I don't want them to think that they can't choose themselves, right? So I think the more we shine, I call them soul whispers, the more we bring those up to the surface and give those gifts to the world, that's going to give our daughters permission to do the same. So I'm really hoping this makes like a generational impact in the way that women think about power because their power is their gifts. And if they're nervous to do it, like let's say someone wants to be a singer or write a book or whatever. I've never written a book. This is my first book, but I had who I was writing this for in mind. The lonely mom that has done everything for her family. Her children have left the nest and she just doesn't know who she is anymore. When you think of it not as success, but as serving, I can serve her all day long. I could serve millions of women like that if because I'm outside of myself, right? I'm not doing it
Yeah.
for me. But in turn, that serving fills me up. And so I'm able to give more. And it's like this beautiful cycle. So that's how I look at it.
And I think that there's so much to be said there about that generational shift. And I know that,
Yeah.
I think about our clients within our wealth planning firm too. As the generations go, one of the most common things we hear is they want our more mature clients. They want
Yes.
resources for their kids, for their grandkids. They want
Yeah.
to initiate change in whatever capacity they're interested in, right? So
Right.
I think there's so much to be said when you talk about no more of the mommy martyrs, no more that's not necessary. And it's not setting our children up for, their most, what do you call it? Like, I don't want to say confidence, maybe, but leaning into their
Yeah.
capability,
But
leaning into their
also their
capability.
agency. Like I want
Yeah.
my kids to have agency over their life so they don't just do and go along with what society ever says. Like my
Yeah.
youngest daughter, I have three daughters. The middle and the youngest one are both animators. And my youngest daughter is already getting a job offer. So she's like, Mom, do I have to go to college for 4 years if I'm already getting offers? Or if my professors are saying they don't have much left to teach me? So it's a big conversation because we're so wired to be like, go to school, do this, but we're trying to think a little bit outside the box and give her some agency over her life to decide, like, if these places that she's working at, like Disney, Pixar, or whatever, don't require animators to finish college, it's just going to be on the table. And a lot of people would not like to talk about that, but I'm super open to that. I like to think way out of the box because who designed the box anyway? I'd like a
Amen.
word. Like a word. Don't put me in a box anymore. And I have to say, it's not a victim thing. I take full responsibility for showing up a little bit smaller in my life than I should have
Mhm.
been. And I had someone, I think the start of it was when I was about 30. This one lady, I loved to sing. I tried out for the X Factor. I got a golden ticket, all the things, right? It was so fun. But this one lady told me, you have such a bright light and a beautiful voice. You should be really careful with that power. And I instantly shut down. Can you believe that? That
Wow.
one. And I think that had more to do with her than me. But I think the older I get, the more I'm not letting society affect me. I'm going inward for what do I really truly know I need to do. And I think when you do that, you get the right answers every time. You really do.
Hey, Brittany here. In case you hadn't heard, our latest book, Dream Architecture, is available for the taking. Think about it like this. What is your biggest, wildest dream of what retirement could look like? Not the dream that your friends have, or your parents maybe had, or your coworkers. Your best dream, the unreasonable one, the one that you might have trouble admitting even to yourself. So that is what the Dream Architecture book is about. Hop on over to dreamarchitecturebook.com so you can start dreaming big today. Yeah. Wow. Like that is, I can't even, I can't even get my head around a comment like that. And good for you for taking that forward and applying it and now not letting your voice be stifled
Yeah.
because you've got
Yeah.
so much to put out there. So
Yeah.
the thing that keeps running in my head as you give some of these examples is kind of like this underlying theme of limiting beliefs. So
Yeah.
Karla, if you encountered somebody who was like, I'm too old, too out of touch, insert whatever you want to as a
Yeah.
describing word that would hold them back from reaching their truest potential. How would you help
Yeah.
them work through that?
Yeah. So that's in my thoughts and beliefs chapter. I think it's chapter 9. So you hit it right on the head. Our thoughts create our beliefs create our thoughts create our actions, and our actions create our reality, right? And so I think of thoughts like this. It's like going by on a freeway. All these cars are going by. Just select the ones that you want. So you have to know we were never meant to serve our brains. Our brains should be our masters, right? What we should lead with is our heart and our gut. So our brain, it's almost like there should be a bouncer that's like, I'm not going to let these thoughts get in. And the bouncer's like, nope, you're not on the guest list anymore. Thank you for the thought, but come by tomorrow. So I am very selective. I'm very intentional with what thoughts I pick to marinate on. And I'm very quick to let go the ones that I know it's just a thought. It is not me at all. And so another way I help my clients, it's a acronym that I came up with is FLIP. So I have them flip it, feel like it is possible. So if they say, I can't write a book, well, let's flip that. What if you can write a book? Or I can't play basketball. Well, what if you could learn to play basketball? And so I think when you flip it, and also I apply another lesson, it's called the lens of a friend, because I think I didn't know I could write a book. I was nervous. I've never written, I love to write songs, but I didn't know if that would translate to a book. But when a friend comes to you, all of a sudden we can see every possibility for them, right? There's no roadblocks. And so I really get my readers to pick their one thing that they want to focus on, and then to see that through the lens of their best friend and wear that through the whole process of reading my book, because they will have a completely different experience. Instead of listening to their inner critic, I make sure that they are listening to their inner compass.
Oh, listening to their inner compass. I think that is
Yeah.
so good. So this is kind of a continuation of this, and cheating a little bit because I know obviously the message behind the book, but one thing I think that is so great that you really pull out or draw out or help kind of put in front of people is helping people maybe redefine their passions or figure out the things that they're passionate about, reignite that. And
Yeah.
then you help them narrow it to their one thing.
Yeah.
And so can you talk through that? Because as a multi-passionate person,
I know,
thinking
me
about my
too.
one thing, it stresses me out a little bit.
Me too. So I will help flip that for both of us, because I could barely write that chapter. I'm telling people to focus on one thing. But here's the beauty in that, and this is a great lesson for your listeners. So I take them through this process called the 10 C's, and it's a play on my website, The Empty Nester Club. And so what I want people to do is just get really quiet, go outside for a half hour, and ask yourself these questions like, what are you convicted about? What are you just naturally conversing about all the time? What are you compassionate about? So I take them through all these letters, and then all these things will bubble to the top. And usually it's like two or three. And then I have them pick one for one reason. And here's the story behind it. So back when I did this for myself, I love music, right? I love music. And I also love, I'll probably do a podcast someday because I love getting other people's stories out, right? Like you do. It's not about you, it's about your guests and all these wonderful people that you have on your shows. And so in 2019, I was asked to do a TV show in Park City. The owner of the TV station was just like, you need your own show. And I was like, okay, well, I've never done TV. And it's a little show, it's a little town. But so my good friend Terry Sidford and I love to interview people and really light other people up. She's a coach. So we had a show for a year. Then through that, I met someone who was bringing all these Nashville Unplugged stories, songwriter shows to Park City. And then I got involved in that. And then that led me to starting up the first Park City Songwriter Festival, being a part of that team. So the thing for me is, and the TV and the station ended up closing. So I could have thought of that as a failure, but I flip failures all the time. And so for me, see how that ping ponged me towards my purpose?
Mhm.
That's what I think is so magical, is when you narrow it down to the one that's really calling you. And for me, it was my book that could help me. I love bringing communities together. I love good conversation. I love the collective of women raising each other up. So that one will really hit the nail on the head, but also it leads me to so many other things. And so I would look at your one thing as just your starting point, but it's going to be almost like a domino effect, and you'll eventually get to the other ones. So, but I think there's blessings in taking action, and that's when you take action, that's when all the other gifts and all the other things will come about.
It's funny because I feel like you were reading my mind through that as you're talking, and you're talking about your journey and this TV show and everything that resulted from that. I'm like, but yes, it's all like call it divine intervention, call it what you want,
Yes.
but you were
Yeah.
taking action towards a vision that you had for your future. And I
Yes.
think that that's so important here. And again, when I think about our listeners, people tuning in, it's like we all have those things we've put on the back burner. We all have those things that we're like, well, it would be nice, but do I really
Yeah.
have the time, the talent, the energy, again, whatever excuse or limiting belief that you can come up with, we've all got them.
Absolutely.
I've got them
Yeah.
too. So I think that calling forward that the action is important is so, I call it
Yeah.
vital when people are thinking about moving towards that future and something that's maybe a little bit scary. So you,
Yeah. And I think too, it's less exhausting when you listen to your soul whispers. I mean, mine for like writing a book or singing or, all that stuff or trying out for X Factor. That was a big one. I was nervous. I was not going to do it. Then I did it.
yeah,
But it's like holding a beach ball underwater. Just let that thing go. Let it rise to the surface. And then I think also too, what you're speaking to is like when you are aligned with your purpose and your truth, the universe will align with you and
yes.
things will start happening so quickly. And oftentimes people get so discouraged. Like I did pick my one thing and it's not happening at the speed I want. But I think when you really pick your passion project and it's the right one, unfortunately, the universe is going to throw you a ton of roadblocks to see, like, do you really want this? Do you really want this? And then once you have really stuck with it, that's when the floodgates open and things happen that you couldn't have even architected yourself. I mean, talk about architecting your dream life. That's when the universe takes over and is like, strap in. Here we go.
Buckle up, friend. And be careful what you ask for.
I
Uh,
love that zone though. I love that zone and I'm so grateful because I feel like, whatever you believe in, that's when
mm,
you are really standing in your true purpose and joy. And that's what we came to experience here. So,
yeah, no, you're so dead on, Karla. And, all I could think about as you're sharing that is you can feel it, call it
yeah.
energy, call it what you want. But when you are
Yeah.
on the right track towards something that ignites you, and again, like
Yeah.
you can think about for our listeners' perspective, I love the topic of the empty nest because I think it's an
Yeah.
important one. But I think
Yes.
that what makes your message so powerful, Karla, is that it spreads into so many different scenarios in life where people can do the work that you talk about and apply it
Yeah.
to so many different areas, which is what truly makes it
Absolutely.
powerful. So, one of
Yes.
the things that I think can be frustrating, and you kind of called this out a little bit, is that you may not feel like you're making progress fast enough. So,
Hmm.
I know one of the things that you talk about is like the tracking of your progress. So, what are
Yeah.
different milestones or things that you help people to make mark of, to call out, et cetera, and so forth, that can really help them feel
Yeah.
like they're moving in the right direction?
Absolutely. So I think that's one of the cornerstone chapters. So my book's divided into three segments: the past, present, and future. So we have the mom look back at the past, all the highlight moments from being a mother. And then the middle section's all about the present, doing some soul keeping. What are my limiting beliefs? Am I listening to my inner critic or compass? And then finally, in the future section, we start applying and taking action on the game plan. And so for me, I think people can overestimate what they can get done in a day, but they underestimate what they can get done in a year. And for me, it's all about like, what are your values? You ask about that on a lot of your podcasts. You have to know your values because that drives your direction. And so when I work with clients and get them to pick their one thing, then we apply. It was Cunningham, some article, but they use SMART goals. You've heard of SMART goals, right?
Yep. Yep.
I'm sure their goals are specific, they're measurable, they're attainable, they're realistic, and they're time bound. And so, but we really spend time on realistic because that's where I think limiting beliefs can come into play. Because someone might be like, well, I want to learn how to play guitar in a year. I'm 54. And I'm like, well, let's break that down. Is it realistic or not? Is that based on society? Are you trying to be the next, Tim McGraw or, what's success for you? And so when we break down that if you practice guitar for 18 minutes a day for 1 year, that is like, I forget the math. It's like 1,000 minutes or something. I did the math for one of my clients and they were like, oh, they saw the power in having a realistic goal and doing it consistently. Working harder doesn't make you better. Working consistently and letting that time compound is what makes you better. So 10, 15 minutes a day, you can conquer anything in a year.
Mm, yes, and I think I liken it to we've heard the adage before. With a lot of our clients, they're like, "Well, the topic of age," which I think age is irrelevant personally, and especially, and
I
I
agree.
promise I won't go down this rabbit hole, but with what is happening in the world of longevity and
Yeah,
new opportunities for your health and proactive measures, there's so many cool things happening. I truly believe
yeah,
that age is kind of irrelevant and it's just a number.
I know.
But it's one of those things where you're in conversation and that's the mindset. One of the first things that we often say is, but the years are going to pass anyway. The time is going to pass
Yeah,
anyway. So,
Yeah.
whether you decide to take action or not, that time is going to go. So let's fill it with the things that get you excited again, that get you reignited
Yeah.
for life in your future. So,
Yeah.
Karla, if you could, and I know you've touched on your journey, but I think about just the process of your book and, the past, the present, and the future. If
Mhm.
you could go back to the younger Karla, let's even say before you had kids, before you knew what this crazy thing called motherhood would be about, what advice would you give to your younger self?
That's really interesting that you bring that up. And, I don't want to give away too much about my book. I want to give some. But in chapter 2, we have the current mother, myself, write a letter back to the younger mother. And so you have to go find, I have it. I did the exercise myself. You have to go find your first Mother's Day of holding your child.
Oh, I
Look at
love
how
it.
young I look. I didn't know anything. And it was such a beautiful process to me because it connected her dreams from the past and almost like integrated them back into me as a mother in the present. And
Mm.
my heart swelled when I was writing this letter because, I've been through cancer twice. That was not easy. I would get radiation, I'd drive up the hill crying, and then I'm like, I have 27 minutes to cry because I have to be a mom. And unfortunately, that's part of my daughter's stories. But for me, I just want her to know that look for the glimmers every day. You're going to have hard days, but the glimmers are there. And that is what the magic is in life. And so I'm trying to do that more, even though, I just lost my father-in-law and, hard things. And so I think I would tell her too that she is going to get through some stuff that she never thought was possible with grit and grace, and she's fine. Everything's okay. And your kids are awesome. But that's what I would tell her is just truly enjoy the journey. Really, it's just those mini magical moments that make a life. That's what I
Mm.
would tell her.
I love that. And again, it's like hindsight is 2020 and we
Of
look back
course.
and there's I'm a big believer in I think reflection is important because I think there's a lot of
Mhm.
lessons in the past, but there
Yeah.
is also this fine line between the lesson and dwelling, right? So I
Yes.
think that again, your framework, and this is what I love so much about your book, and I can't wait for it to get out, is
Mm.
that you really give people really it's the promise of possibility. It's the promise
Mhm.
of possibility for their future, and I think that's what is so exciting about it.
Yeah.
So if
And
you
I
go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, and actually, the way it's funny you just touched on future.
Yeah.
The way I close out is a letter to my readers, and I have my readers because we define what they want to look like in a year, that future
Yeah.
self, and we have that vision of that future self, draw them today. So that, how would your future person be behaving? What are her habits? What are all that? We don't want to base that on the past. We want to base it on a vision of the future. And then when they do all the work, we close it out with that future person that has achieved all their goals, especially the one thing, but it's knocked down others. That future person writes a letter back to the present mother, thanking her so much for getting started and telling her how amazing it is and how worth it was.
Oh my gosh. I get a little emotion just even thinking about that and that journey and what this must have been. Because I know, Karla, just from our previous conversations, you have poured years into this book. Like you have
Yes.
poured years of yourself and your experiences and the experiences of others around you. And I think it's just so precious. And that again, that breakdown and that summary, I think is so important. So if you could
Yeah.
in all of this and think about your coaching, think about your writing, think about this book in particular, all those great things, if you
Yeah.
could summarize your message in like a couple sentences, like what would you
Mhm.
hope for people to take away from the work that you do?
That's a great question. Well, especially because I'm so focused on women, that's, because I'm
Yep.
an empty nester, I'm living what I'm writing about. I think I would tell them that they need to show up, as and shine. I know that sounds kind of silly, but just you've got to ignite those passions in you. They're not going to go away. And when your kids start leaving the nest, you can't hide behind your busyness anymore. Like you're going to be exposed. And so this is really the time to start nurturing that. And I also think like we support each other so much. Like I wanted to read this little thing. It's this is just exactly what you're asking. It's called A Story of Love and Loyalty. Because I think sometimes women are scared to start, but we have each other's backs. We're lifting up other women all the time. It says, in the wild, female elephants are known as fierce protectors. When one of their sisters is suffering, they circle up around her. They close in tight, watch, guard, and even kick dust around her to mask her vulnerable scent from predators. We are the same. This is who we are and who we are meant to be for each other. Sometimes we're the ones in the middle. Sometimes we're the ones kicking up the dust with fierce, fierce love. But the circle always remains. Thank you for being one of my elephants.
Oh
So I just
my
wanted to send you
goodness.
that because, like, ever since I've met you, you're like, you need to be on this podcast, and you've just been connecting me, and I've been doing the same for you, and that's how it's supposed to be.
Mhm.
So that would be my advice is, hey, ladies, it's time to shine. Let's go.
Amen to that. I cannot say enough. Um,
Yes.
so Karla, before I ask my last couple of questions, if somebody wants to connect with you, if they want
Yes.
maybe an advanced copy of the book or early list or all those good things, how do they do that?
Well, I wanted to offer that for your listeners. So I wanted to offer up 5 advanced copies of the book. So all they have to do is reach out to you and then I'll send that to you. And then I also wanted to offer what I call my level 1 coaching. It's 2 30-minute calls with people to talk to them about the book before they read it. And then an extra like call, like an SOS call when they're like, gosh, I read this chapter and I really want to talk about it. So I'd love to offer that up for your listeners. But you want to go to theemptynesterclub.com and then you can find all the information there. And that's what we are on all the socials too, the Empty Nester Club. The book's called The Almost Empty Nester, but the website is theemptynesterclub.com.
Awesome. And I highly encourage anybody listening in. And I think about this too, like whether you are an empty nester, whether you're an almost empty nester or you know one, I would bet that we all can find somebody in those categories that I just described. I think again, I'm a little biased because I've seen a sneak peek behind the curtain, but Karla's work is truly meaningful and the book is impactful in helping you think about what is ahead for your future and what to get excited about again. And I think we could all use a little reignition at times. So,
Yeah, yeah. That's my next
Karla,
book, Reignite Your Life.
well, what the heck?
Of course.
I sense a collaboration on this or
Yeah, I
something.
know. Maybe we should write this one together and go faster.
I think so. So Karla, my last couple of questions. Number one is, I'm a big believer in getting to know the human behind the work, the human behind the value. So when you think about your future, specifically for you, what are
Mhm.
you really excited about? Like, what are you dreaming about for your future?
Mhm. My dream is to be walking down the street and have someone come up to me and say, "Your book changed my life.
Mm,
I'm like a happier mom. I've wanted to do this one thing forever, whether it's juggling or play banjo. I don't even care." But she said, I can just see her walking up the street. I can just see that she's lit up from within. So that's what I see is just turning on lights all over the dark world. That's just not that the world's dark, but I just want to make it a little lighter.
yes. And
So
I love that.
that's what yeah.
I was just going to say like the psychology behind that too. I love the shift that you just did right there where you're like,
Yeah.
well, make it a little bit
Yeah.
lighter. That is the zone of possibility, my friend.
Yes, the zone of possibilities, absolutely. And I do think too, I'm big about community and bringing people together. So next fall, I talked to you about it, but I want to do a retreat, a women's retreat here in Park City. I have a list of magnificent women that are going to be there talking on all different kinds of topics. We'll go for hikes in the mountains and the aspens will all be yellow. I can just see it. It's going to be great. So, and we'll do a virtual one too, and then also my coaching program, I want to do group coaching because I find that one-on-one is great, but being able to share your stories with like, let's say groups of 10, if, they're going to learn so much from each other going through my course together. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. That's going to be in 2025.
Awesome. Well, I mean, that was a loaded question because you came with that and you were like, I'm going to do this, 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 this. And there's
Yeah.
no
Well, I don't talk
guessing.
about that future stuff that much. So yeah, you got a sneak peek.
I love it. Well, Karla, my last question for you today is what didn't I ask you that I should have?
Well, I'd love to know the secrets of what you think is behind creating, like being an architect of the dream, your life of your dreams. Like, tell me a little bit about what you tell your people. Like, what's your one thing?
Yeah. You know, this goes back a long time ago. And my co-host, Brian Sweet, he's the founder of Sweet Financial.
Yeah.
A long time ago, he had this notion of helping people really to realize their dreams, that people maybe
Yeah.
weren't thinking big enough or dreaming big enough, kind of
Yes.
along the lines with that. So that's really where the concept of the dream architect was born.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as time has come forward and we are in front of more and more people and see people that have created maybe in one or two aspects of life some really great things. They've come off a lucrative career, they've had a business, they've done this, they've, raised a family. There's still areas that we saw opportunity for focus. So it was on their health and
Yeah.
longevity. It was on their purpose, which is so,
Yeah.
blatantly what you're helping people with, a legacy, all these different aspects. And, as we look forward, it's really about creating a community of individuals here who can come together and who can, have access and resources to great people like you, Karla, to, if they need wealth management, we've got that. If they need health and
Right.
longevity referrals, we've got that. If they need
Right.
somebody to help them think about their legacy in different ways, we've got those resources. So,
Yep.
when you think about the premise of the Dream Architect Life podcast,
Yeah.
it's having people like you on and
Yeah.
really being able to, bring it all together for people so they don't have to search, right? Let's make life a
Right.
little easy. We got enough on our
Ah,
plates. Let's bring it together in one
hit
space.
play.
Yes.
Everyone subscribe. Get notified.
Oh, I love it. You're just
I
like
love
plugging it
that.
away.
Yeah, let's go.
Well, Karla, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your time with us. It was truly, truly my pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And this will be out in September, so I hope this helps a lot of your readers. So thank you for having me on. Thanks for everything you do and shining your light in the world. I just knew that the day I met you. So you're just amazing. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you. Well, that wraps up today's episode of the Dream Architect Life podcast. If you got some golden nuggets from Karla today, be sure to share it with the amazing, wonderful women in your life to help them prepare for the empty nest stage and to really get excited about what's ahead. Also, be sure to like and subscribe so that you are the first to know when a new episode drops. We'll catch you right back here next time.